You wake up. For a second, you're somewhere else completely, a place that felt more real than real. There was someone there, someone you haven't seen in years. Something was happening. Something urgent, something that mattered. And then you open your eyes and it's gone. You reach for it. You can almost feel the edge of it, a color, a feeling, a name. And then in the time it takes to check your phone, the whole thing dissolves. Not faded, gone, like it was never there. This happens to you almost every single night of your life. And you've probably assumed it's just the way things work. Dreams disappear. That's normal. Move on. But here's what nobody tells you. Your brain isn't forgetting your dreams by accident. It's doing it on purpose. And the reason why reveals something deeply strange about how memory actually works, about what consciousness really is, and about what your brain is secretly doing every single night while you think it's just resting. If you're new here, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of thing we cover. Let's start with what a dream actually is, because most people have it wrong. For most of human history, dreams weren't a curiosity, they were a technology. The ancient Egyptians built entire temples dedicated to dream interpretation. Priests trained for years in the art of reading them. The Mesopotamians kept written dream logs on clay tablets dating back to 3000 BC. They believed that dreams were the one channel through which the gods spoke directly to the living. The ancient Greeks took it even further. They built sanctuaries called Asclepia, places where the sick would travel from across the Mediterranean to sleep in a sacred space and receive a healing dream. The word for dream in ancient Greek, oneros, was also the name of the divine messenger who delivered them. Dreams were not something your brain produced. They were something the universe sent you. And then Aristotle came along. Around 350 BC, he wrote 3 treatises specifically on dreams, and he argued something that got him labeled a radical, that dreams come from inside the body, not from the gods, that they are generated by the lingering sensory impressions left in your nervous system after a day of experience. He was essentially describing what we now call neural processing. 23 centuries before we had the tools to prove it, even Freud, in 1899, built his entire model of the unconscious mind around dreams. He called them the royal road to the unconscious. Whether you trust Freud or not, the point holds. For thousands of years, across every culture that ever existed, humans treated what happens in their minds at night as one of the most important things a brain could produce. And yet, every single morning, you lose almost all of it. Here's the number that should make you stop. Researchers estimate that within 5 minutes of waking, you have already forgotten 50% of your dream. Within 10 minutes, that figure reaches 90%. And if you happen to wake up gradually, without any disruption in the middle of a dream cycle, you may remember absolutely nothing at all. Not even the fact that you dreamed. Think about what that actually means. Your brain is generating roughly 2 hours of vivid, emotionally saturated experience every single night. Experience so real that it triggers genuine fear, genuine grief, genuine joy, your heart rate spikes, your eyes move, your breathing becomes irregular. And then your brain destroys almost all of it, every morning, for your entire life. That is not an accident. That is a feature. But to understand why, you first have to understand what your brain is actually doing during a dream. And this is where it gets genuinely strange. When you fall asleep, your brain does not power down. It cycles through several distinct stages roughly every 90 minutes, like an internal biological clock that runs all night without stopping. The stage that matters here is called REM sleep, rapid eye movement. It gets its name from exactly what it sounds like. During this stage, your eyes dart back and forth beneath your closed eyelids, as if tracking something happening in front of you. Because in a very real sense, you are. REM sleep is when the vast majority of your vivid narrative dreams occur. And during REM, your brain is almost as electrically active as when you are fully awake. Your heart rate rises, your breathing becomes irregular. In some studies, the brain's visual cortex during REM sleep is neurologically indistinguishable from the visual cortex of someone who is actually watching something happen in front of them. You are not passively resting, you are running a full simulation. So if your brain is this active, this engaged, generating hours of experience every night, why does all of it vanish the moment you open your eyes? Here's the thing that took neuroscientists decades to piece together. The answer isn't about what your brain is doing during the dream. It's about what one very specific structure inside your brain is not doing. And once you understand this, you will never think about memory or consciousness the same way again. Deep inside your brain, curved beneath the cortex on both sides, there is a structure roughly the shape of a seahorse. The ancient Greeks named it that, in Latin, hippocampus. This structure is the central gatekeeper of long-term memory. It is the region that decides in real time what gets saved and what gets thrown out. Every memory you carry, from yesterday, from childhood, from this morning, had to pass through the hippocampus to become permanent. Without it, experience leaves no trace. And here is the critical detail. The hippocampus does not operate the same way during REM sleep as it does when you are awake. During dreaming, hippocampal activity drops dramatically. It is in a very real sense partially offline. It is still processing. It is still doing things we don't yet fully understand. But its core function, encoding new experience into long-term memory, is severely compromised. Which means that everything you experience during a dream, no matter how vivid, no matter how emotionally overwhelming, has nowhere permanent to go. The file is created. Then the system that would save it isn't running. And when you wake up, the temporary buffer clears. The file is erased, but the hippocampus is only part of the story. At the same time, the hippocampus goes quiet. A second critical region of your brain goes almost completely dark, the prefrontal cortex. This is the structure directly behind your forehead. It is responsible for logic, for narrative structure, for linear reasoning, for the ability to make sense of sequences of events. When you are awake, the prefrontal cortex is constantly imposing order on your experience. It is the editor. It takes the raw stream of sensory input your brain is receiving and turns it into a coherent, followable story, one that can be retrieved later precisely because it has structure, because it makes sense. During REM sleep, this editor goes dark. This is why dreams feel the way they do. You can be in your childhood home and a stranger's office at the same time. Someone you love can change into someone else entirely mid-conversation, and it doesn't feel strange. You can fly, or fall, or speak a language you don't know. And none of it feels wrong while you're in it, because the part of you that would normally say, wait, this doesn't make sense, isn't there to say it. And this is precisely the problem for memory. Your waking brain retrieves memories by following logical chains, narrative threads, causal sequences. This happened, then that happened, because of this reason. Memory is architecture. It needs scaffolding. Dreams by definition have almost none. Which is why, the moment the prefrontal cortex comes back online as you wake up, it looks at the residue of last night's dreams and cannot file it anywhere. There's no hook to hang it on. The structure that would make it retrievable was never built. Now here's the part that is the most counterintuitive of all. One leading theory in modern neuroscience argues that your brain doesn't just fail to save dreams. It actively, deliberately, intentionally forgets them, not through neglect, through design. The idea works like this. Your brain encodes memories by linking new experiences to existing ones through a process called association. Something happens to you and your brain immediately connects it to everything it already knows, which is how the memory becomes retrievable later. You recognize a face because it links to a name, which links to a place, which links to an emotion. Memory is a web, not a list. But dreams are not associated with reality. They are internally generated simulations. They are full of people, places, objects, and events that your brain fabricated entirely. If your brain treated dream experiences the same way it treated real experiences, if it linked them into the same memory web, you would eventually begin confusing them with actual events. You would remember conversations that never happened. You would have emotional responses to things that didn't exist. You would, in the most literal neurological sense, lose the ability to distinguish what was real. So the brain clears the cache. Every night, it runs a biological maintenance cycle. It processes what matters, consolidates what is useful, and deliberately discards the rest. Your dreams unattached to reality, lacking logical structure, incompatible with the associative web of your actual life, get swept away. Not because they don't matter, because holding on to them would eventually cost you something the waking mind cannot afford to lose, the ability to know what actually happened. So if forgetting dreams is a feature of healthy brain function, why do so many people feel like they simply don't dream at all? Why does this experience, one that ancient civilizations treated as sacred, that Aristotle theorized about, that Freud built a career on, feel completely absent from modern life? The answer, again, is simpler than you'd expect, and it points to something darker. The only reliable window to catch a dream is the moment of waking. Specifically, you need to wake up during or immediately after a REM cycle, before the temporary memory buffer clears. And here's what alarm clocks do. They wake you at a fixed time, completely indifferent to where you are in your sleep cycle. They don't check whether you're in REM. They don't care if you're mid-dream. They fire at 7 a.m. because that is when you told them to fire. And if that happens to fall in the middle of deep, slow-wave sleep, the dreamless kind, you surface with nothing. You'll swear you didn't dream. You did. You just woke at the wrong moment. But it doesn't stop there. Alcohol, which a significant portion of the population consumes within hours of sleep, suppresses REM sleep dramatically, shortening cycles, reducing their intensity, cutting the total amount of dream stage sleep you get each night. Sleeping pills, prescribed to roughly 1 in 8 adults in the United States, have similar effects on sleep architecture. And perhaps most insidiously, chronic sleep deprivation. When you are consistently underslept and you finally get a full night of rest, your brain will often prioritize deep, slow-wave sleep where the most critical physical and neural repair happens over REM. Dreams are moved to the back of the queue. Here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. Researchers who study dream recall believe that people who say they never dream almost certainly do dream, every night. They simply wake up under conditions that make memory formation impossible. The simulation runs. The experience is generated. But because the hippocampus is offline, because the prefrontal cortex isn't there to structure it, because the alarm fires at the wrong moment, or the alcohol suppressed the REM cycle, the memory never forms. You are not someone who doesn't dream. You are someone who always wakes up at the wrong moment. And we built a world that almost guarantees it. There's one more detail, a small one, but it stays with you once you hear it. The ancient practice of incubation dreaming, sleeping in a sacred space specifically to receive a meaningful dream, always involved sleeping in darkness, in silence, without disturbance, for as long as the body required. No set wake time, no artificial light, no external interruption. The person would wake naturally, mid-dream or just after, and immediately recount what they had seen to a waiting interpreter. They had, without knowing the neuroscience, engineered the exact conditions that maximize dream recall. We replaced all of that with alarm clocks, blue light, and the assumption that how we sleep today is how humans have always slept. It isn't. And what we lost in the trade is something most of us never thought to miss. So what do you actually do with this? First, you stop blaming yourself. The inability to remember your dreams is not a flaw in your brain. It is your brain executing a system so elegantly designed that hundreds of thousands of years of evolution couldn't improve on it. The forgetting is protective. It is purposeful. It is the price your brain pays to keep your memory system clean, your sense of reality intact, your waking mind free of the noise of fabricated experience. But here is the thing about understanding a system. Once you understand it, you can work with it instead of against it. If you want to start catching your dreams, science offers one instruction that is specific, simple, and actually works. Keep a notebook and a pen next to your bed. Not your phone, a notebook. The moment you wake up, before you check anything, before you sit up, before you say a word, write down whatever you can reach. It doesn't have to be coherent. Write the fragments. Write the color of the room you were in. Write the emotion you woke up with, even if you have no idea why you felt it. Write the name if a name surfaces. A texture, a sound, a single image. Anything. Here is why this works. The window between waking and forgetting is measured in minutes, sometimes seconds. But within that window, the memory exists. It is partially formed, already dissolving, but it is there. The act of writing creates a real-world anchor. It forces your waking prefrontal cortex to engage with the material before it vanishes, to impose just enough structure that the waking memory system can hold it. You are essentially bridging two states of consciousness with a pen. Researchers who have studied this systematically find that consistent dream journaling, done every morning for several weeks, significantly increases dream recall. Not because your brain starts producing more dreams, because it starts forming stronger connections between the dream state and the explicit memory system of your waking life. You are training the bridge. And here is the detail that makes this worth taking seriously. Within just a week of keeping a dream journal, many people begin noticing patterns. Recurring places, recurring emotional textures, recurring figures that appear in different forms across different nights. This is not coincidence. This is data, the raw, unedited output of your unconscious mind, the version of you that exists when the editor is offline, when logic is suspended, when whatever your brain does in its most private and most unguarded state becomes briefly, partially visible to the waking world. Ancient temple priests studied this data for years. Aristotle wrote 3 treatises on it. Freud staked his entire career on it. And every night of your life, for every year you have been alive, your brain has been generating hundreds of hours of this completely unique, entirely personal experience, shaped by your memories, your fears, your unresolved questions, your most private associations, a private cinema, built just for you, running every night and erasing itself every morning. Most of us have never seen a complete frame of it. We built alarm clocks and packed schedules and screens that follow us into bed and convince our brains that midnight is noon. We built a life that systematically destroys the exact conditions under which dream memory is possible. We did it in the name of productivity, of progress, of getting more done. And we never stopped to calculate what was quietly disappearing on the other side of the ledger. Your brain is not broken. It is running a program older than language, older than fire, older than the first human who woke in the dark and tried to hold on to something they had just seen behind their eyes. The dream disappears because holding on to it costs something the waking mind cannot afford to pay. But every once in a while, if you wake at the right moment, in the right way, and you reach for it before it goes, you get to see something no one else in history has ever seen. The exact shape of your own mind in the dark. We traded that for a snooze button, and most of us never even knew it was gone. If something in this shifted the way you see yourself, subscribe. There's an entire archive of exactly this kind of thing waiting for you. And we're just getting started.